Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva.
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
And Liz.
And this is a new list. It's
Mm-hmm.
about murders of New York,
Yeah,
which
feeling a regional city theme.
I like it. I'm here for it. I love New York, so any excuse to talk about it is kind of
Yeah.
cool.
And there's a new Netflix show also that kind of inspired me that was like Homicide New York. I haven't watched any of it yet, but I certainly will.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, a new crime show. It looks pretty good.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so guys, I know we were like, we're getting back on track. Diva's out of town next week, so
Well, this week's
I'm
kind of on track.
This
So
week is. This week is, and
yeah.
then I'll do some solo episodes next week because I'm sure I'll have time. I actually think I will have time. Um,
Wow. Or you can just take a
I know.
vacation. You can just go sit by a pool with a cocktail or something, even though you don't
It's
have
not it's not
cocktails
warm
or
enough. I don't drink, I don't
no.
have a pool, and it's not warm enough. I'll just do true crime. Those are my two options. I'm
True
choosing true crime.
crimecation. Crimecation.
Yes. So hopefully then after that things will actually get back to
Yeah.
normal. My work schedule has become more reasonable, which is fantastic. I'm actually able to like catch up and do extra stuff, which I like to do because I'm like that kind of person. So anyway, things are feeling good. But let's get to the murder.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for all your emails. We've been getting a lot lately. We're terrible at keeping up with them. Please keep sending them anyway. We read them. We love them. We don't acknowledge you. It's not because we don't love you. It's because we're slammed and trying to like function.
Yes.
Anyway, so we're talking about murders of New York,
Hmm.
and you chose, so I go first, right? Not a lot
Yes.
of as uh
Well, if you've been
not a
listening, you already heard our preamble about how Cindy loves New
yeah,
York City and I don't like it. So that would I won't do it again. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
yeah. If anyone has any like hotels they love in New York City, I would love to get those recommendations because I think that's been my struggle as I pick hotels that are not terrible, but just like in weird parts of town, and then I'm stuck in this like weird block with nothing and no food. Um,
Um,
so I
you
think
know what I
it
do?
depends where
I
you land.
use I use Hotel Tonight in New York because no matter
Mm,
how busy the city is, there are always hotel rooms available. So I stayed at like a really nice Hilton in like Midtown for like $100 a night.
ooh,
Because
nice.
yeah, because I booked it at like 5 p.m. and just like rocked in there and like had a great, stay. If
Yeah.
you work the system, you can, it can be good. Um, I love it though, but I love New York. I don't have to be convinced. I don't need a good hotel to enjoy myself. I just enjoy myself. So, but I have found that Hotel Tonight, that app works really well.
I'm gonna try that.
Um, yeah, it's just when you're in like that big of a city, there's
Yeah.
always hotels and you can
Hotels are
get
so
really good deals.
expensive there. I
I
mean,
know. That's
good
what I'm saying.
ones are
Not
like
for like a hundred
bullshit
bucks.
expensive. Yeah. And I
Yeah, a
never get
hundred
enough.
dollars.
I never got
Yeah.
enough from my work trip budget. So it's always like, oh, 200 something a night. And I'm like, did you write this budget in 2008? Like, because I
Yeah.
can't get anything.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just do that and I kind of fly by the seat of my pants a little bit. It's only like the last time I was there by myself, so it like made it easier to do that. But Hotel Tonight's awesome. Like it's a really good app for that. So pay us to say that, Hotel Tonight.
Yeah, that would have been a
There's
great
your
ad.
free ad. I know, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's just something I
All
like.
right.
But all right, let's get into it. So I'm going to talk about a serial killer in New York.
Nice. I'm glad we're doing a New
These
York City serial killer because there's quite a few.
There are quite a few, and this one is
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. This was like an early 90s. So to set the scene, the early 90s, it was when I think of the early 90s, I think of like a dangling cross earring in one ear of a man. And like it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of there were a lot of like there was a lot of news about like gay rights and the gay movement and AIDS and like the AIDS epidemic and a lot of conservatives like spewing hate, which is just the same, will never change. Um, but it was a very interesting time in terms of like gay rights and just people like coming out, and
Definitely.
this
Yeah.
becoming a normal part of life. Like nowadays, it's still terrifying, but it's far more commonplace, especially places like New York and Los Angeles, where it's like, like it's just a huge city and we have whole neighborhoods that are like, LGBTQ plus, type
Right.
of neighborhoods.
Yeah, New York City
And
is like the number one, I think, bastion of like queer communities in the country.
absolutely.
Number
And they
one.
have been for a very long time.
Yes.
But these communities, these neighborhoods, it was much more dangerous and much more overlooked, than they are now. And it's still that
Yeah.
way now, but like not to the degree that it was. So I feel like the 90s was like the beginning of the turning point for all of that. And that's when the majority of this story takes place. But I'm actually going to go back a little bit uh, earlier. I'm going to go to 1950 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Richard Rogers was born in June of that year. He was the oldest of five
Okay.
kids. He had a super middle class upbringing. Um, very, very normal life. They moved to Florida in the 60s and continued their super normal life. From
Okay.
there, Richard went to college and even got a PhD in French studies. He went to college in Maine, and people who knew him there described him as mild-mannered, polite, well-dressed, and very, very neat. As
Okay.
in, not like, oh, he's a neat guy, but like he's clean and organized, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So he lived in a house with, I think, three other roommates, and they all kind of described him this way. He was super easy to get along with. He was like well liked. He was just like he was a normal, not he wasn't normal because again, he was very like organized and neat, but he was a pretty regular dude, right?
Yeah.
So he has a roommate that moves out and a new roommate moves in. At this time, Richard is 23, and the man who moves in is 22-year-old Frederick Spencer. Now, these two become inseparable. People say they are attached at the hip, and it's later thought that they were probably in a relationship. And I think this is the part that made him not that being, how do I say this? Obviously, being gay doesn't make you a serial killer. That's an insane assertion. But
Right.
what I'm saying is his sort of having to hide or feeling like he had to hide it, maybe his family wouldn't have been open to it, or maybe he just wasn't comfortable. I feel like he had a lot of pent up anger about
Yeah.
not being able to like, he was probably upset that he was gay. At its core, he was probably upset that he couldn't just
Yeah.
like be
I
a
mean, that
straight
can
man.
cause a lot of anger and a lot of
It can.
problems in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So he and Frederick were super close until one day he murdered him. Richard murdered
Oh,
murdered Frederick. He just murdered
okay.
him.
Casual.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
all right.
A few days after the murder, Frederick's body was found wrapped in plastic by some people riding their bikes. Found it like on the side of the road, wrapped, I think, in like a plastic shower curtain. He was traced back, using his identification and whatever they found where he lived. And pretty quickly, Richard was arrested. They found like blood stains in Richard's room, like a bloody fingerprint,
Mm.
and they arrested him. And Richard immediately claimed self defense. And what he said was happening was he came home and Frederick was in his room robbing him.
Oh.
And when he confronted Frederick, Frederick attacked him with a hammer, like a roofing hammer. And they struggled.
Oh my God.
Richard,
Okay.
yeah, Richard, wrestled it out of his hands and then beat him with it on the head 8 times. Um,
Okay.
when the prosecution was like, yeah, that's not how Frederick died. He was beaten, but then he was also suffocated. You put a bag over his head and killed him.
Oh.
Richard was like, yeah, I did because we were still struggling and I didn't know what to do. I was just trying to get him
Yeah.
to
A
stop.
bag over the head is not like the self-defensiest thing I've ever heard.
It's not. But
It's just
luckily
like,
for
oh my God.
Richard, Frederick again was a gay man. And the
Right.
jury was like, fuck y'all gays, we don't care. And they found
Scary
not guilty.
criminals, et cetera, et cetera. So
They were like, we don't care if you kill each other, not guilty. And he
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
released.
Especially if two gay people killed each other in this time, it was just like, well, gay stuff.
Yeah, they don't care. So the
Yeah.
jury was like, have a nice life, enjoy.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he moved to New York. Also, I do want to say that ironically, he did use the gay panic defense
Hmm.
as like, oh, prior to this, Frederick had come on to me. So the jury was probably like, he got what he deserved. We're in that era. So they let him go. He then moves to New York and becomes a nurse. He goes to school to become a nurse. He goes to nursing school, which is interesting. You get a PhD in French and then you go to nursing school. I don't know.
Weird
I
pivot.
think it was,
Yeah, not
yeah,
typical.
that's what I was saying. What I was going to say is like, it's a weird pivot. Exactly. But maybe not. I don't know. He apparently was super smart and enjoyed school. So he got like his master's in nursing.
Okay.
I wanted to call out also really quickly because I feel like this happens in the story a couple of times. Um, when he was a teenager, he chased one of his neighbors with a knife, one of his elderly neighbors. Now, he didn't actually stab them, but he did chase them. He was arrested and briefly institutionalized for like mental health issues. Um, but when he was released, his record was sealed. So when he murdered his roommate, this was not information that was even known about, let alone used in the trial. So just wanted to call that out because that I thought was interesting. So anyway, now he goes to New York. He becomes, a nurse, and this is where we start to get into some crazy shit. So he was hired by Mount
Okay.
Sinai and became a surgical nurse there. He also worked in the children's ward, which, as we get into this, you'll realize how fucked up that is.
Mm,
Um, yeah. So he moved to Staten Island. I believe he owned his apartment. He was described as a great neighbor. He had friends. He was a nice and helpful person. According to his job, he was amazing with the children in his care. He was like the perfect person for them. He was just, people said he was like the ideal neighbor, a fantastic friend. Everybody just loved him.
okay.
Now, so now we're in 1988. He's 38 years old, and he meets 47-year-old Fred Lero at a bar, and Richard takes him back to his house for drinks. Richard gave him an orange juice. The man had asked for like a soda. He gave him an orange juice, and the man said, Fred here said that he passed out. And when he woke up, he was bound and had been
Mm,
bound with like medical bracelets, which is so crazy to like
oh,
bring your work home to do that.
that's very
Um,
distinctive. Yeah.
it is. And Fred doesn't know what was done to him while he was drugged, but he knows that when he woke up, Richard Rogers here injected him with something where he passed out again. When he woke up, he said he was naked, but he then woke up again fully clothed outside of Richard's apartment, like somewhere.
Mm,
And so he called a friend, went to the police. The police did arrest Richard, but he got like a bench trial and was found not guilty. And again, released because nobody fucking cares. So here's the second time, or kind of the third time, that he's skirted the law. Because when he was a teenager, he had a brief stint in a mental institution, was released.
yeah.
In his 20s, he straight up murdered someone and dumped their fucking body and was found not guilty. Now, this, you know, found not guilty because nobody gives a shit.
Right.
So now we're in 1991, 3 years later, and there's 54-year-old Peter Anderson who is drinking at a bar in Manhattan. This bar is called the Townhouse Bar. It's an upscale gay piano bar, and a lot of closeted and out gay men would hang out there. Peter meets Richard Rogers, and this is May 5th, 1991. They go back to Richard's house. Peter had just recently divorced his wife and come out as a gay man. So he was living openly, but it was a very recent thing.
Okay.
May 6th, early in the morning, a garbage man working on the New Jersey Turnpike found a dismembered body stuffed in multiple trash bags. This is fucked up. So
Oh,
the body was horrifically mutilated.
yeah. It's in trash bags, multiple trash
Yes.
bags. Yeah.
But aside from that, there were gaping wounds to the body's chest, arms, and legs, which were cut off at the joints.
Oh.
And the body's penis was stuffed inside of its own mouth. So,
Whoa. Okay. I
cut
didn't
off.
see that one coming.
hmm
Okay.
Crazy.
Very
He was,
medieval.
yes, yes. This body had been cut into 7 pieces, by the way, and was identified by Fred's belongings. Not Fred, I'm sorry. I apologize. Peter's belongings. Fred
Okay.
escaped. So Peter was identified by his belongings, which were found also strewn along the turnpike, and it was determined he had died about 37 hours before being found. They had no
Mm.
leads, so moving on. The next victim was 57-year-old Thomas Mulcahy, a married man and father of four who was known for having affairs with men from time to time, which I guess his wife just dealt with.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, he lived in Maine, but he was in New York for a conference. And his credit card was tracked after he went missing or was found, and tracked his last known whereabouts to the Townhouse Bar. Now, this
okay.
was July of 1992, so about a year later. He was there July 8th, and his decapitated head rolled out of a fucking trash bag 2 days later.
Wow.
In total, 6 bags were found. One bag contained his intestines, a piece of his stomach, a latex glove, and a plastic cup. The rest of his stomach was cut in half and placed in 2 further bags. The fourth bag had portions of his skin with a bite mark on it. The
Just
fifth bag
skin,
had
just
a.
loose skin.
Mhm.
Okay, all
He
right.
had been skinned. He had been skinned.
Okay.
Mhm. His stomach had been cut in half. He had been skinned.
Wow.
The fourth bag held a portion of his, or sorry, the fifth bag had a blood-stained compass saw, a pair of latex gloves, a shower curtain, and a bed sheet in it.
So there's like
Two
also
hours
some medical
later,
things happening, right? Like some medical expertise a little bit.
some dissection. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. 2 hours later, a sixth bag containing his legs was found at a picnic area at the Garden State Parkway in Stafford Township, New Jersey. So I had not mentioned his legs. I know it's hard to keep up with all the pieces, but his legs
Oh,
were found. His
okay.
death was caused by multiple stab wounds, and his body parts had been washed clean of blood.
Oh,
So, mhm. Moving on to the third victim, was 44-year-old Anthony Marrero, a gay sex worker who lived in Manhattan and hung out around the Townhouse Bar. He was not last seen there, though. He was last seen at the bus station. And in May 1993, his body was cut into 7 pieces and found in 6 bags. So we're starting to see that pattern. We're
okay.
starting to get to the kind of, you know, what this killer, what Richard here likes to do. He had been stabbed to death and dismembered. His entire torso was cut in half this time, not just his stomach, and his body was washed. So this is a very, organized and precise murder, very clean, very neat,
Wow.
just like Richard, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, the last known victim was 56-year-old Michael Sakara. He was an openly gay man, and he was found. This happens in late July 1993. So we have, May of 91, June of 92, and then we have May of 93 and July of 93. So he's starting to pick up his pace quite a bit. So he was last seen talking, Michael here was last seen talking to a man named either Mark or John, who claimed to be a nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital. So mixing in, you know, some truth with the lies, which is a clever way
Mhm.
to do it,
Yeah.
Uh, Mr. Michael Sakara's body was also cut into 7 pieces. And it took a
Mm.
few days for all of him to be found because the bags were strewn all over New York. So took
Wow.
quite a few people being traumatized for his body to be fully found.
Oh my god.
And although he had been stabbed, he actually died from bludgeoning.
Okay.
So whatever Richard was doing didn't go quite to plan. So he was still murdered in a very horrific way, but slightly different.
Yeah, but
There,
otherwise his MO was like hella consistent.
super consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once he found what he wanted to do, he was going hard.
Yeah.
There were 2 other murders tied to Richard Rogers, but he cannot be definitively tied to them. Like they think it was him. I'm gonna skip them. They were like in the 80s, and
Okay.
again, we don't know for sure. But as for how he was caught for these crimes, this is a long process. Police were able to lift fingerprints and a few palm prints off of some of the trash bags. I'll say right now that the police actually did a really good job on this.
Okay.
They did hit a wall, but they did kind of what they should have done. So there is a forensic files on this. I didn't watch it, but I was like, when I was reading this, I was like, this is like, I'm like reading a forensic files episode. Like it's fucking perfect. So anyway, they find the fingerprints. They didn't get any matches. So then they get the skews on the trash bags. They're like, we're gonna find out where these trash bags came from. And
Mm,
they,
nice.
yeah, fucking smart. They traced them back to a CVS in Staten Island. Next, they found a sticker on that saw that had been thrown in the trash bag, and they traced that to a hardware store that had two locations on Staten Island. They had like 20 something locations, but two were on Staten Island. And one of those two was directly across the street from the CVS where the trash bags had been bought. So now they're thinking, okay, this guy lives in Staten Island, probably near this CVS and hardware store, right? Next, they use their
Yeah.
brains and they go, oh, these bodies were disarticulated, meaning the bone had been carefully removed from the joints, not just like cutting through the bone. They were like dismembered in a very precise way, essentially. And they thought, well, a butcher could do that, or more likely with these type of precision cuts, it would be somebody in the medical field, like a surgical nurse.
Mhm.
Going back to location information, Anthony Morero, the third victim, his head had been found in a limited edition grocery bag, which had also only been available on Staten Island. They also had the witness statements about Mark or John Person, who was a nurse that worked at St. Vincent, and that tracks with the cuts. So they followed these leads. They even found a guy named like John that worked at St. Vincent that was a nurse that had a house in Staten Island. It was not him. Uh,
Okay.
they they ruled him out, but they were like kind of. I mean, it's great that they were chasing down leads, right?
Yeah.
They also, during this time, got an anonymous tip from a man who said he met a nurse who worked at Mount Sinai Hospital at a gay bar. So there, this guy, this nurse, is giving him real information. The two went back to this nurse's house. When this man fell asleep, the nurse attempted to tie him up. He fought the nurse off and left. He later saw this same man at another gay bar, and this nurse asked him to come back to his house again. And the guy was like, I fucking think not, but pretty bold that
I
he
think the
tried,
fuck not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fuck not. So police got photos of every male nurse at Mount Sinai and showed them to one of the bartenders from the townhouse bar. She said, Richard has similar hair to a man I've seen here, but I don't think I've ever seen him here.
Okay.
And that was it. Richard wasn't
Mm,
even particularly a suspect. That was just a little piece of information where she's like, his hair looks familiar, which, like, that's not really enough.
no.
So the case went cold. They had a task force, but it was disbanded in November 1993 after only like 5 months. So, they did all the right things, but they kind of gave up pretty quick. Um, that being said, the case was never closed. And finally, in 2001, new fingerprint technology was used to obtain more prints from the trash bags. These prints were uploaded into a new database that had not existed until 2001. And the fingerprints of Richard Rogers, which had been taken all the way back in 1973 when he murdered his roommate, were in this database, newly added, and were found to be a perfect match.
Oh my gosh.
So it took, 10 years from the time of the first killing for him to be arrested. But they did arrest him.
And like
They
lots
arrested
of
him.
forensic file style,
Yes.
whodunit hijinks. Yeah.
Yeah, and like never giving up, which I love. He was arrested while at work, but brought in under false pretenses so that he wouldn't see it coming.
Hmm.
So he came in and he started to kind of cooperate. He even said that he knew one of the victims, but as soon as he like realized why he was there, he was like, I want a lawyer. Lawyered up, clammed up, that was it. However, police had enough. They searched his home. They found some, items of interest, including Versed, which is a date rape drug that you inject into people. They also
Okay.
found photos of men's shirtless bodies, which Richard had drawn stab wounds all over, which is like a very Patrick Bateman moment. Uh,
Yeah.
like the like, yeah. They all sorry, little what is American Psycho
Yeah. American
reference there.
Psycho. Yeah.
They also found a bunch of horror films, which another Pat Bateman moment, but also like I have horror films, you have horror films. That's kind
Mm,
of dumb.
plenty. Yeah.
Yeah. But more frighteningly, most frighteningly, potentially to me, they found he had highlighted passages in the Bible about like murder and decapitation, which like
Hmm.
I am a heathen. I've not read the Bible. Why the fuck are those in there? Like the Bible sounds kind of metal, to be
Oh no,
honest.
it's very metal. There's a lot of torture. There's a lot of violence in that book. Yeah, for sure.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, because of him clamming up, because of all the time it took them to compile evidence, because they didn't have like a ton of forensic evidence, it took all the way until 2005 for him to go to trial. During this trial, he was given a plea deal option where he could have pleaded guilty. They only found definitive proof to link him to two of the murders. Like they could only charge him in court for two of the murders, even though we all know it was
Yeah.
all four. So they were like, if you take this plea deal, we'll give you 32 years. You can serve it concurrently, and you'll be eligible for parole after 15 years. And he said no. He was like, no, I'm not
Wow.
taking that deal. hmm So instead, they went to trial, and it took the jury less than 4 hours to find him guilty on all charges and give him two life sentences without parole.
Wow. Bip bop boop. You're done.
hmm So, and then as to how he killed these men, we don't, because he didn't admit to it and will never admit to it. We can sort of piece it together. Obviously, it's not like super hard to figure out. We don't know exactly what happened, but like essentially from the men who escaped, what it sounds like is he would drug their drink, take them to
Hmm.
their house, drug to his house, drug their drink, tie them up, inject them with more date rape drug, probably rape them, then kill them, then dismember them in a very particular way.
It's very
Um,
Dahmer
it's
overall.
so Dahmer.
Yeah.
And the
This is
fact that he got
after
away with it,
Dahmer.
93
So it's
when he
like
was
right
gone.
after.
It was like, yeah, it was like real close, really
Wow.
close.
You wonder if he knew about it.
I don't know, but it's so fucking similar, and he got away
Yeah.
with it in similar ways
And
for
Dahmer
similar
was huge
reasons,
news, national news.
which is weird because it didn't seem to fucking do anything in these
Mm.
cases. They still
No.
treated them the
No.
same way. Um,
Definitely.
but I think that similar to Dahmer, he wasn't murdering these men while they were conscious because he's such a like neat and orderly person. I feel like he would want like unconscious victims. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's hard for me to say, but I have a feeling that that's kind of where the way that he would do it, you know. So yeah, that's the story about that motherfucker.
Wow.
Yeah,
Just really chilling at that bar. Just fucking
straight up, man. And
also very
that
Dahmer, the bar thing.
yeah,
Nightlife.
yeah.
Yeah. Picking dudes up.
It's a very fucking Dahmer case. Like I the whole
Hmm.
time I was reading, I was like, dude, this is like I've heard this story before. Like where have I heard this? Like, oh,
Yeah. And
oh,
I love the bit with the
yeah.
skew codes too. It's like all the forensic little tricks are cool. I feel like I'm back in a hotel, watching forensic
Yeah,
files.
yeah, yeah. For sure, right? I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's great.
Uh anyway, yeah, so there it is. And
All right.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah. What's yours?
Mine's horrible, but I'm excited to rage about it with you because it's going to make you mad. I picked it because it's going to make you mad. Um,
Oh,
so
okay.
that tends to be
Great.
a theme with me.
Yeah, right?
Okay. Cindy reacts. Reaction. Okay. So this is a case of Romona Moore. And you'll see both of my cases this week have a definite thematic grouping thing that
hmm
connects them. This is a case of Romona Moore, spelled Romona. This happened in
Romona.
Brooklyn in 2003. Um,
Okay.
Ramona was a third year psychology student at Hunter College. She was on the honor roll by all of her friends and family's account. Like, she never missed a single fucking class. She was a super, super, super go getter, overachiever, really driven. She lived with her parents in Flatbush in Brooklyn. They were a family of Guyanese immigrants. If you don't know, New York has a huge population of folks from Guyana and other countries in the quote unquote West Indies, which is a weird colonial distinction, but basically like the Caribbean through like South America. Like
That's
folks
where
from all over.
My ex's family is from there. They were Chinese
Guyana. Yeah.
slaves in Guyana. Yeah. hmm
Yeah, Guyana and formerly Suriname as a really interesting colonial history, and they kind of
Like
shipped,
that.
Europeans shipped people all over to Suriname and later Guyana. So yeah, there's just interesting communities there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a really like hardworking, responsible young lady, and boop 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 boop. April 24th on 2003, April 24th, Ramona just disappears after she tells her family that she was going with a friend to a Burger King around 9 p.m. And she leaves the house, presumably to meet this friend, and she never makes it to the Burger
Oof.
King. She is gone in out of thin air. Um, her family raises alarms right away with the authorities, like that fucking second, because it's not like her to just disappear. Like the
Yeah.
cliche of like she would have told someone like she's that. She really wouldn't have just disappeared.
Yeah.
Um, and despite their emphatic pleas that this is who Ramona is, it's the Ramona is black, and the police do not give
Mm.
a fuck at all. So
Mhm.
there's one detective in particular. I wrote his name down in particular. I wrote his name down somewhere here. Da, 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 da. Yeah. Oh, Detective Carey. I forget his first name, but this Detective Carey is quote unquote nasty. That's the mom's term about it, and is
Of
basically like
course.
mad at her for even trying to report her daughter missing, and says that she's off with a boyfriend, she's out partying, and she's like, literally, why do you think all black
Mm.
people are just out partying? Like, just because she's black, like she's
Yeah, like,
could
what
not
the
be more
fuck?
studious and responsible. Like she doesn't go out and disappear. And she lives at home, right? So
Right.
but she's 21, so they're like, we extra don't care because she's not a minor.
Yeah, you can't even, like, push the issue,
Yeah, yeah,
she's an adult, it's like they don't have to give a shit.
yes. So they don't even open the case or give a single shit for 4 days.
Oof,
4 entire days go by.
that's
Um,
really not good.
mhm. On
Mm.
April 28th, while the family's getting blown off, and they're of course doing their own investigation. They're putting up their own flyers.
Mhm.
They're asking around, doing their own shit. But on April 28th, the family gets a call from a mysterious, I believe, a male caller who there's I don't think ever really identified that I found. But uh, oh yeah, sorry, actually, boop, 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 boop. I got this wrong. I'm very tired, you guys. I have a baby, so cut me some slack.
Once again, if
Hold
you
on.
forgot.
Yeah, I'm very tired. I was up from like 4 a.m. on. Okay.
Bleh.
Um. So. Oh yeah. So basically, for 4 days later is when they open up the case. I just wanted to also specify really quickly that when they finally put out their police report, they misspell her name as Ramona
Oh,
R.A. instead of R.O.
nice. They don't even
It's a
fucking
nice
care
touch.
enough.
Really nice touch.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
But it's 2 months later after she disappeared when an anonymous caller, I believe a male caller, calls Ellie Carmichael, which is Ramona's mom, and in response to their posters, right? Because the police haven't done much, so this is in response to the family's posters. Um,
Okay.
Calls them and gives them the remote address of an abandoned house off of Kings Highway in Brooklyn. And so she calls police. Thankfully, she doesn't go herself. She calls police, and they go to that location where they discover her body wrapped in a blanket, Ramona's body. She's just been
Ugh.
tossed in a side alley next to an abandoned house, like trash, literally. And I will get more into her injuries when I get to the trial in a second. And well, you'll hear more about them throughout. But suffice to say, she's been extensively battered and tortured. Um, this is a really horrific case and angering. It is as angering as it is horrific. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Um,
Mhm.
when investigators finally get around to giving a shit about Ramona's case, it's basically when she's dead. Like the investigation starts when they find her
Mhm.
body, and then they're like, "Oh shit, I guess we
Oh, she
better invest."
wasn't just being yeah,
Oh shit,
yeah,
we better investigate. Okay, but
yeah.
she's dead. So it's only
Thanks,
after she
Greg.
was found. Yeah.
Right.
Um, Then they
Fucking
also
dickheads.
get they make this connection to a recent report by a 15-year-old girl that came only
Mhm.
days after Ramona's disappearance, and this 15-year-old described being held captive and sexually assaulted by two young men. And she actually escaped, like very dramatically. Like they probably would have killed her. She had to like escape elaborately.
Ugh.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And those two men, she reports, she identifies them as 22-year-old, I believe he's younger at the time, like 19 or something, but
Mhm.
22-year-old Troy Hendricks and 24-year-old Kaysen Pearson. They held this young girl captive, and her story is itself really harrowing. She had duct tape all
Mhm.
around her face, which I just, for some
Ugh.
reason, I really hate. I mean, not for some reason, it's
Oh,
obviously
no, no,
disgusting.
no. Yeah, it's so
Um,
fucked.
ugh,
I
uh,
understand what you're saying though, like, why do we feel disproportionately horrified by that when we talk about all
duct
this
tape
other
on your
stuff? But
face.
I get it. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
it's gross.
awful. Yeah.
It's not supposed to be in your face. It's very harsh,
Yeah.
adhesive. Okay. So she is told while she's being, even though she can't see, she's told that the body of another woman is right there, and they ask her if she can smell it, and she said she did smell a fucking funky ass smell, but she couldn't see.
Okay.
Um, so she's being tortured and raped like adjacent to Ramona's body.
Okay.
Yeah, which is insane.
That's fucked.
Yeah,
That's so
and
insane.
they threaten that she's going to end up like her, like this other girl who's dead, and they say that they told her that they killed the other girl because she fought. So like basically don't fight back, right?
And she didn't, and they let her go.
Well, no, they didn't let her go. She fucking escaped.
Oh, she escaped. So who
Mhm.
knows? Who
I'm
knows
not sure
then?
they would have let her go. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Ugh.
the police, when they hear this, go talk to this young woman, or teen rather. They put it all together and realize this is clearly Ramona. It's clearly the same attackers because there's lots of
Right.
similarities in the
Mm-hmm.
MO, and like for instance, both girls were tied with shoelaces and like little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When they go get a search warrant to look at, I believe. Case in Pearson's basement room where he lived. He lived in his grandma's house, but in like the basement. And
Mm-hmm.
when they search the room, it's like, oh, look, bloody murder weapons, blood everywhere. He didn't do any cleanup.
Got
So
it. So he's not
they
even like he doesn't even
find
give a shit.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he does flee. So they arrested Troy
Oh.
Hendricks right away. But there's a manhunt for 2 weeks for Case and Pearson. He's found, they go to a couple places all over, but he's eventually found in Yonkers, and he's charged. And they're both charged with Morona's murder and with the assault on the 15-year-old.
Oh. Okay.
Um, yeah. So boop 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 boop. Fast forward to 2006, and it's like the blood evidence is like slam dunk, right?
Right.
Pearson, the trial is delayed. There's a mistrial because Case and Pearson randomly stabs his lawyer.
What the
Um,
fuck?
yeah,
Really?
as he's leaving the courtroom one day, the both men try to do a really dumb half-baked escape attempt where Kaysen stabs his lawyer and Troy jumps over a barrier and try to grab a bailiff's gun, but they're both quickly caught. They don't go anywhere.
Christ.
Um, yeah, they don't even leave the building, and they're charged with all kinds of other charges and like assault and whatever, obviously for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, boop boop boop. Then the actual trial rolls along by 2006, so there's a little delay.
Okay.
At the trial, the prosecution details the extensive injuries that Ramona was subjected to, and she was held for, I believe, at least 2 full days alive. So think about that for just 1 second. Remember what the police were not doing?
Looking for her or
Giving a
giving a
shit.
shit at
Yeah,
all.
and she was
Right.
alive.
Oh my
Yeah,
god, dude.
yeah. Yep,
Oh my
yep,
god.
yep. It's wild.
Oh,
So
that's fucked.
it's really fucked. She was sexually assaulted. She was beaten. She was tortured with a knife, with a saw. She had her fingers sawed, and I think some of them were cut off or cut up in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
She was beaten with a hammer and a large, not the barbell, but the bar that you put the weights on.
Mm-hmm.
Her,
Oh.
yeah, her face was completely smashed in. Her jaw was shattered.
Oh my god.
Um, yeah, so she was suffering, and a lot of this, like I said, was over
Oh.
her being alive for an extended period of time.
She was, yeah, this was
Hmm.
just fucking torture. This was
Yeah,
just torture.
yes, very much.
Like gnarly.
These guys are fucked up. And here's another thing: if you're not already mad at the cops, you're about to be even madder at this guy. Um, so there's this guy who goes to trial as a witness against our dudes here, Troy and Kaysen. His name is Raimondo Jack, and he's a
Mm-hmm.
friend of these fine gentlemen. That's sarcasm. And he was visiting both of them when they bragged that they had a girl in the basement there, and he's like, "Oh, I don't believe you." Blah, 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 blah. So they take him to
Mm-hmm.
go see the girl, and he described it as like a horror movie type scene. This young girl was under a sheet. She's in chains. Oh, by the way, they also found the chains. So that was like a slam dunk piece of evidence. She was chained with like dog chains.
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah, around her neck. She was completely swollen and bruised. She had burn marks under her eyes.
Jesus fucking Christ. And they're just like Meh.
Yeah, and this is a really chilling exchange here. Apparently, the Troy and Kaysen say to Ramona, "Tell Ramondo, tell him why we're doing this. We told you, so tell him why we're doing this." And Ramona says, "For fun. They're doing it for fun."
Seriously?
Yeah,
Just
because
they
that's what
just
she was told to say. Yeah,
oh
or she
my
was told that.
God.
And then they ask her, "Is Raimondo different? How is he different than us?" And she says, "Yes, because he's a nice man, and I think he's going to go help me." Meaning, she was like, "Raimondo is going to go out there and report that I'm here to someone."
Oh my God.
Guess what, Cindy? He didn't.
He didn't.
He did not do that.
Why the fuck not?
This person had every chance to, while she was still alive, to literally
To
fucking
help
save her
her.
life. Yeah.
But also,
Um,
like, who knows
yeah.
if it would have even done anything? It just feels like
Yeah.
everybody failed, but like I feel like there were so many hurdles to her getting
Several things.
help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. This is
Yes.
fucking insane.
He never told
Truly
the
insane.
police. He actually later told his fiance and her uncle, and he said during trial that he thought maybe his uncle called the police. So that was like a weird out. He also said he was scared of the men or whatever, the classic thing. So it's just like, yeah, fair. They were also gang members.
Mm,
That so there is
yeah.
like a thing about going to the police. I understand that, but like still, like this is pretty inexcusable.
Yeah.
um
I mean, just come on. Come the fuck
Oh,
on.
also, there's actually one other person who fucking failed. And I believe I heard Troy Hendricks's house, I believe, according to this little quote I pulled. But
Hmm.
they, at Troy Hendricks's grandma, remember how he lives with his grandma?
Hmm.
Is in the fucking house. And when they interview her, they're like, "Didn't you hear like a girl screaming or anything?" And she was like, "Nope." Guess what? This bitch
Come
surely
on.
did. She
Come the
surely did.
fuck on. She surely fucking
Because
did.
we know she's covering for her fucking rapist grandson, because the 15-year-old girl, when she's recounting her story, says that when she escaped, this motherfucking evil grandma actually tried to get her to
To try to keep her?
yeah, like wouldn't open the
Oh,
door, wouldn't
hell
let her come
fucking no.
upstairs, wouldn't help her, and actually like raise the alarms, like, "Hey, Troy, come get your victim," right?
Oh, Granny, I would fight this
Hmm.
grandma. This is a grandma I wouldn't have any problem beating up.
So
Truly.
fucking Ramona was failed by the police, motherfucking Raimondo, and a grandma. Like,
Jesus
it's
Christ, dude.
very upsetting, you know?
To be failed by
Um,
a grandma is like a particular
and a
kind of
grandma.
insult.
Like,
Yeah.
multiple people could have saved you and didn't.
Like, what the
Um,
fuck? What the
yes.
fuck?
So obviously, these two fucking assholes are found guilty. Outside in front of TV cameras, Ellie Carmichael spoke, saying, obviously they're glad to receive justice, but the media and police, she said, "quote unquote, all I got was nothing but disrespect from the media and the police." So she's immediately raising alarm bells with the public about like the police fuck this up.
Yeah.
The men got life in
God
prison
damn,
without
dude.
parole, and they got an additional 22 years for the escape attempt. Um,
Okay. So they
Attack
did.
moment.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
they're taken care of. However, in 2008, the and they're protesting the fact that Detective Carey was an asshole to them, like right away at the trial. The family and community were marching, and they were like chanting like "Detective Carey messed up," like that's like the chant.
Good. Yeah, he
Um,
fucking did. This guy's a
he,
turd.
yes,
Yes.
her Yes, they are. He is. So, but the mom, 2008, was allowed to file a civil lawsuit against the NYPD, which I'm sure they get lots of those,
Nice.
for the quote unquote, this is the official language she uses, the practice of not making a prompt investigation of missing persons claims of African Americans while making a prompt investigation of white individuals. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean, pretty much. Nailed
this
it.
Ellie Carmichael is like testament to how smart Ramona must have been. Like this is where she gets it from, because she
Hmm.
goes out of her way not to just allege this about this one case, but all her daughter's case, but to kind of she does like a full-on research project, backing up this allegation with statistics. It's literally statistical analysis of all the times the NYPD put in different types of hours and efforts into different cases. So she's like, "Look, I have a dossier here."
I got a fucking
Um,
spreadsheet, bitches. Good for
yes,
her. Good
yes.
for her. Fuck these
Um,
people.
And a major part of her argument was the fact that at the exact same time, I believe there's multiple different, that Ramona's case was being ignored. The police were putting all their effort into searches for, I believe, multiple different missing white women, including
Mm-hmm.
Svetlana Aronov, who's the wealthy and, of course, white wife of a doctor, prominent doctor. And she was
Mm-hmm.
found tortured and beaten, separate, horrible case. But she was
Yeah.
found just before Ramona was. But she was missing at the same time. And by contrast, for Svetlana Aronov, they did press conferences, they did posters, they did door-to-door canvassing, they looked at all this media attention, right?
Right. They
So
cared because she's a respectable white woman.
yes, so the difference is pretty clear.
Pretty fucking
Um,
obvious.
yes.
Ugh.
In 2014, a federal judge named Nina Gershon ruled against the Moore family. Are you shocked? And
Right.
said that there's
No.
no racial bias. It's kind of like, wow, you found that you're not racist. Justice
I
system,
didn't do
amazing.
anything wrong. I looked into myself,
In
and
conclusion, yeah, it's
yeah,
incredible. And here's
Jesus.
the quote to anger you. I just wanted to hear your reaction to this quote. Um, although a jury, this is Nina, although a jury could well find that there was different treatment of the Moore and Aronoff cases, and even assuming that this differential treatment could be taken as racially motivated, which you're like, okay, it is well established that even so tragic a case as Miss Moore cannot itself show a practice so persistent and widespread so as to constitute the existence of a widespread persistent practice. So she's basically like, yeah, this was probably racist, but like it wasn't like widespread. It wasn't a pattern. And I'm like, if this one case was treated differently because of race, then give her the lawsuit. Like
how is that's the whole fucking
give her the
point.
fucking check. Like
That's
what?
the whole fucking point. I don't understand. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I'll also say pretty soon after this, her body was found. After this case, there was a TV show that was on at the time called like NYPD 24/7
Mm-hmm.
that I watched, and I thought that was I watched it this morning. I thought it was really interesting because I did all my kind of research separate, and then I watched
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
and it of course is like it's kind of like Cops, right? Where they're like going around with the cops, and they show the finding of Ramona's body, but the way that
Mm-hmm.
the show is kind of edited and framed, they make it seem like they just found the body. Oh shit, and we got to do an investigation. Like, but kind of makes it seem like that's where it starts, and then boom, they're on the job, right? Like, because they
Yeah.
do a serious investigation once the body's found. Like they are, but they skip the part
Right.
where they weren't giving a shit beforehand. They kind of don't talk about that.
Right.
And
Of course they're
and
gonna frame it where like they're like not pieces of shit, but like they
yeah,
are
of
pieces of
course.
shit.
And they show the
You know.
investigation, and that does happen, which is proper, like I said, but it's way too late.
Yeah.
And the cops, they do show them reacting to, like, they do show the protests and the family and talk about their claims, quote unquote, but like
Mm-hmm.
it shows the detectives being like really dismissive of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and clearly like it's not hard to imagine these guys being dismissive of the mom, and also they throw in a little because it's 2003 and it's New York, so they actually throw in a little bit of like anti-Middle Eastern racism too. At one
Whoa, what the
point,
fuck?
yeah, at one point they're on a flight because they had to go to Georgia to try to track down Case and Pearson because they thought he was there, but they didn't get him, and so they're
Right.
flying back. And there's like, I forget the exact statement, I didn't get it down, but it was like, so yeah, some Middle Eastern guys on this plane with a fucking like probably has a box cutter, and I'm like, oh, so it is not shocking to imagine these fucking guys being racist, like.
Yeah.
If you pay
Yeah.
attention, there's like a little
Jesus.
wink, wink, little detail there that's like, oh, oof. Um, the early 2000s in New York it was a racist time. I mean, yeah, it was.
Yeah. That's insane. It's just like a bomb. It's like a bomb
Yeah,
of racism.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for sure. There's tons of
ah,
references to crack too. Like, even though I don't think crack played any kind of role in this, they're like constantly mentioning it. Like, yeah, two crackheads just doing crack, and then they take a girl, and there's crack, and I'm like, was there?
yeah, like I don't have any evidence of
I
that
don't think
besides you
there was a
saying it.
crack
Like this is the first
crime.
I'm
Like,
hearing
this
this.
is just like a serial killery type of crime. Like, I don't think it was a drug thing.
Well, as soon as somebody's skin isn't white, there has to be some like
Gotta be
mitigating
crack,
factor.
crack,
But
crack,
that's
crack.
not not like when their skin's white, there's a mitigating factor that makes them
Yes,
innocent or less to blame. And
but
when their skin is not white, there's like they were also doing this
yeah,
nefarious shit. And like, yeah.
yeah. So if you watch this, it's on YouTube. If you watch this show with like that kind of their biases in mind, you notice these little things. One time, see, one of the detectives is like, yeah, all the time you get like these gangbangers that just will do a bunch of crack and then they'll knock some crack dealer off who's on the street. But this crime isn't like that at all. And I'm like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. It's completely different. Like, but they're like shocked that it's not just all crack.
Right. Right. Oh
Uh,
my God.
Also, it's completely side note, but there's actually a totally separate New York City murder of Ramona Moore, RAM, Ramona Moore. So I could
There's
have put her on the
another one?
list. Yeah, but just spelled slightly differently. So
Jesus
RAMONA,
Christ.
and she was killed in 2015 in the Bronx. But I won't
Was
get
that
into
one
her
as
case.
fucked up and twisted?
It does sound fucked up, but I don't know if there's NYPD bullshit involved. Probably,
Almost
honestly.
certainly. Yeah.
But yeah, we can save her for another list.
Yeah. Another time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, holy shit.
That fucked
Uh,
up. It's fucked up to me that she was alive while the police were like, yeah, she's partying. And meanwhile,
yeah,
she's like
fuck
being
her.
tortured. She's like being fucking Junko Ferruted in a
Oh
fucking
my
basement.
God.
And then they're like, oh, she's having a great time.
You know, I was watching TikTok last night as one will do.
Hmm.
And it was have you seen that thing where they're asking women like would you rather be in the forest alone with a random man or a random bear? And a lot of women are like the random bear would
Bear.
might be like the safer choice. And men are like,
Yeah.
"Are you fucking kidding me?" And then somebody used a guy being like, "Y'all are more afraid of men than bears." And they like cut from a guy saying that to the story of Junko Furuta. And I was like, "Yeah, pretty fucking much.
At least with the
Pretty
bear, it would be
fucking much."
fast.
Yeah, right?
Like,
Like, they'll just eat your head. They'll just crack your
yeah,
skull
it
and
would
your
go
brain
real
gets
fast.
smushed.
Yeah.
It's quick. It's not
Hmm.
people who say they get attacked by bears and survive, like, the whole ordeal is, like, a couple of minutes at most, you know?
Yeah,
And that's the ones that survive, so, I mean, I think I'd take my chances with a bear as well.
absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. There's no scenario where I pick a random guy.
No, I don't think so either.
No.
Okay, on that note,
Here we
that's
go.
it. We're
Yeah.
done. There it is.
Two
Thanks,
more coming at
everybody.
you. Yeah.
Yes, coming at you later this week, and then you'll have me solo next week, and then
Hmm.
hopefully we'll be back at it. Thanks everybody for listening. Please like, rate, review. Keep emailing us. We love reading them. Send us more cases. Somebody actually emailed us this morning and was like, "Have you done um, murders where people tamper with other people's parachutes?" And I remember or I did one case
Okay.
ages ago, but I
No,
don't
but
know if it was like love
oh, the
triangle or
parachute one.
revenge. It was
There's
the parachute
also a
one.
murder where someone tampered with the scuba gear. We did that, right?
Yeah, but that was like
Yeah.
potentially not a murder, and he got off because they don't think it was intentional.
Well, I don't know if we've done this also, but like staged accidents to me is a whole genre. Like
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
that's a whole genre.
Yeah, but maybe we could throw in another parachute death with that one. But anyway,
Okay.
there's some really good ideas getting sent to us. Keep them coming, guys.
Staged car
We always
accidents as
need them.
well could be its own thing.
Oh, that's all such a big one.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah, so we got lots more lists, lots of fresh ideas. Please feel free to send them to us. Share with your friends, family, like, rate, review, do all that good stuff. Join us on Patreon, join us on Instagram. I guess that's it. If you guys don't know where to find us, all of it's linked in our show notes. You can get to all of
Hmm.
our online stuff there. And until the second half of New York Murders,
Stay.
off our
Liz.
list. Philip. Bye.